In my last anime review, I talked about a really popular anime called Death Note. Spoiler alert, I liked it. At the end of the video, I mentioned that Netflix made a live-action adaptation. I said I saw it. Rather than telling the audience what I thought for an extra 3 minutes, I wanted to make an entire video about it because A, I want to talk about this, and B, I love movies and I figured I could also incorporate reviewing movies onto this channel. Fun fact, I also considered doing music reviews on this channel as well. But anyways, Death Note the movie by Netflix that was made in Hollywood. Guys, I know about the reception of this movie and I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Ladies and gentlemen, I really liked this movie and thought it was great. Guys, please let me. If someone would just. Wow. Good thing that was just an exaggeration and not the actual reaction from people. Good thing the world is accepting of other people's opinions despite them being different. I mean, hey, look at the reaction to the outcome of the 2016 election. It's such a relief that people decide how to move on and continue with their lives instead of screeching into the air like a moron and act as if the world will end. Right? Who am I kidding? Everyone already left the video once I said I liked this film. Oh, you're still here! I guess I should actually talk about this film now instead of blabbering about the inevitable. Death Note the movie follows the story of a boy named Light Turner, who is in no way related to another doofus named Light Yagami. He finds a notebook from a Shinigami named Ryuk, and it can kill anyone as long as their name is written in it. He then goes on a killing spree with a girl named Mia Stutton, who is in absolutely no way, shape, or form related to Misa Amane, and they develop the pen name of Kira, which is Japanese for killer. However, the authorities are not found of these shenanigans, and they get an idiosyncratic detective named L to track down Light, who is somewhat similar to another detective, but he is not the same person. Now you are probably thinking of one of two things. Nick, isn't this just basically your same plot description of Death Note the anime? Are you treating me like an idiot? The other one being, which is what most of you are probably thinking, Nick, stop treating this like it's its own thing compared to the original, or I'll whine and complain and never respect the opinions of others. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that was very similar to how I described the Death Note anime, because this movie is based on it. Also, yes, I am treating you like an idiot because almost all of you have thought about the second option, even if you did think about the first one. Now, I'm going to be honest, when I first saw the trailers, I was a bit nervous because it seemed like they were going for more of an action-y approach instead of the suspenseful tone in the original. I was also worried that Light would come off as the edgy teenager archetype. He totally does! Shut up, I'll address that later. I was also worried on how they portrayed L in the second trailer, but aside from those, I kind of was expecting something different from the source material. Look at Starship Troopers. That thing I heard was very unfaithful to the book it was based on, but I heard a lot of people liked it. So I thought to myself, it can't be as bad as everyone is saying it is. And guess what, angry commenters? You were wrong! Now let's start off with something we can all agree on. Ryuk was amazing. Willem Dafoe does an awesome job portraying the character of his haunting and creepy performance. The makeup and CG on Ryuk is also amazing, even though throughout most of the film his face isn't really seen and Ryuk is often hiding in shadows. I guess it's because in this adaptation they want Ryuk to come off as mysterious, which is something I can get behind. One cool thing I thought that was worth noting was that there was a scene where they show that the Death Note was used by more people, implying that Light wasn't the only one. Maybe one of the previous owners had a last name of Yagami. Jokes aside, I thought it was an interesting shot seeing as how even people who never saw the anime can have the first introduction to Ryuk. They make it come off as if Light should be suspicious of Ryuk. Also, he eats a lot of apples. If that doesn't scream fan service, I don't know what will. Speaking of fan service, there's one detail in the film I really liked where Light reads Ryuk's name as Ryuk, and Ryuk immediately corrects him and says somewhat aggressively that it's pronounced Ryuk.
Don't trust Ryuk.
Hey kid, it's pronounced Ryuk.
Now, I'd like to address the elephant in the room that everyone loves to think is the reincarnation of Hitler and say this movie is very unfaithful to its source material. That is a fact that even the Flat Earth Society won't deny. Light is not the smart, intelligent boy we know in the anime. He is sadly an edgy teenager who hates everyone and everything, and his favorite band is 21 Pilots. Light admittedly was kind of the worst character in this movie. Also, when he does find the Death Note, he thinks he could take on anyone and anything, kind of like in the second half of the anime where Light doesn't think anything through all the way. And to quickly reflect off the edgy teenager archetype, Light is literally mad at his dad, and not because he restricted him from going to the Fall Out Boy concert with a shady looking girlfriend who is completely open and yet vague about her addiction to heroin, but because Light's dad refused to kill a man that killed his mom. As I think about that reason, it is somewhat sympathetic, but that still doesn't justify Light's unlikable character. However, Light realizes the consequences of his actions in the middle and ending of the film and realizes that he needs to start taking this Kira business more seriously and thoughtful considering the pickle he put himself into. It's almost like an origin story of how the protagonist got his or her power, and at first they think they know how to use it, but then they realize they have to use it more wisely and thoughtfully. I'm going to be very honest with you, despite Light's unlikable character, I thought there were some nice touches on Light. He is more flawed than he was in the anime. Granted though, Light only started becoming flawed in the anime and he became power hungry and thoughtless about his plans. Light in this movie doesn't think things through because he takes things personally, and he did think he could get away with this in the beginning, and at the very end he kind of becomes more smart about his decisions and how he has to use the Death Note. Another character I'd like to talk about is Mia Stutton. If you couldn't figure it out, Mia is based on the character Misa Amane. Mia is a cheerleader who kind of became in love with Light after he found the Death Note. Also, she took an interest in him in the beginning of the film. It's really funny. A lot of people say that Light was the one that fell in love with Mia instead of the opposite. Well, they are wrong. Mia held an interest in Light and confessed after he found the Death Note. I know this for a fact because I watched this movie twice to see if I really was watching an atrocious movie, and that during my first viewing I wasn't on shrooms and was hallucinating that I was watching Donnie Darko. But boy oh boy was I right. Mia did fall in love with Light in this movie. Furthermore, remember when Misa was Light's plaything in the show? Well, in this movie, she is more of a challenge to Light because unlike Misa, Mia actually has a character and wants Light to do things she thinks is right. In fact, she actually gets infuriated with Light at some times, but yet still loves him. She even becomes more of a vicious killer than Light, wanting to flat out murder people who speak up against Kira, whereas Light wants to stay low and continue killing criminals his way. Mia even goes as far as to put Light's life on the line so he could do what she wants him to do. I'm sorry if that line was very vague, but I wanted to not spoil anything in this review, much like the anime review. Also, even though Mia was established as a cheerleader in the beginning of the film, she is not a popular or famous girl like she is in the anime, which I find kind of funny because Misa in the anime is a mindless moron who does anything for Light, regardless of the order. Mia in this film is not popular and yet thinks for herself and does things even without Light's permission. It's almost a metaphor for how fame can get to your head. The chemistry between Light and Mia is pretty great, but audiences may not enjoy it because they act like an emo couple, and we all know how emo teenage couples can be. It's kind of nice how they do a little Fox News and Kill when they're with each other acting as Kira. They do also disagree with each other a lot in the middle of the film on how Kira should act upon being challenged by the police and Elle. Speaking of which, Elle was what I was worried for most of this film's portrayal, but all in all, he's alright. No, he's not. He's black and that's not right. Well, pal, got some Freudian racism going on, don't we? No, you're the racist one because you like this movie. As I was saying, Elle in this film was pretty fine for what they worked with. He is still an idiosyncratic detective. He does remain anonymous and doesn't wear shoes unless he goes outside. Also, he still does that weird holding and sitting position, just like the anime. He also has a sweet tooth, just like the anime. Although his anonymity is almost at risk as he did remove his face mask in public on several occasions, especially during the climax of the film. It is kind of strange how he also shows himself on public television in the film, although he does wear a mask in the scenes where he is outside his working area and in public. It could be a risk as some guy could pass him and say, "Hey, you look like that guy on TV," and things could get bad for Elle. He also does get emotional and personal during the middle of the film, which I will not explain because spoiler reasons, but he does become very out of character in the end of the film. Watari is also in this movie. He acts like a mentor towards Elle, and he is not really much of a butler character like in anime. He was just kind of there in my opinion, but hey, that's how I also felt about him in the anime. Another character I want to bring up because I want to talk about this is Light's dad. Light's dad is pretty similar to how he is in the anime. He basically cares for his family, or what little of his family he has left in the film, and does his job as he does. And honestly, there is only two differences from how he was portrayed in the film. The first one being is his name. As for the second reason, I know I said I would not be spoiling anything, but much like the anime review, I will be making an exception to this. He finds out Light is Kira in the end of the film. As for what happens after that, I will not tell. The film is also nicely shot. Another thing worth noting is that they really pushed the R rating of this movie. The director himself even admitted it, saying he didn't want a PG-13 rating. He wanted an R rating as he thought that would suit the film. And let me tell you, he really pushed it. Does it deserve the R rating? Yeah, I guess. From what I can determine, it's mostly R rated because of its unapologetically brutal death scenes. In the beginning of the film, not trying to ruin anything here, A bully that Light decides to test a death note on gets decapitated, and despite that scene being unrealistic, it still got a reaction out of me. The movie's tone was definitely dark, but it wasn't too dark. It wasn't on the level of Shadow the Hedgehog combined with Reaper from Overwatch. This has been balanced out by moments that were both intentionally and unintentionally funny. An example is this when Light is watching TV and sees L giving a speech, and Ryuk says he's rooting for L, and Light tells him to shut his trap.
Now I'm rooting for this guy.
Just shut the f up.
There are some unintentionally funny moments like this scene. I didn't notice it during my first watch, but after my second watch I saw it. And to be honest, I didn't think it was as funny as everyone says. I was just like, well, that was kind of a little overreactive. A moment I thought was really dumb was the dance scene where Mia made Light wear a hat that makes him look like the Onceler. Also, after Light put on the hat, they had a photo shoot scene where they posed like an emo couple and gave the finger to the cameraman, and he or she was just like cool with it. In a real American high school, the photographer would be like, hey guys, can you not post such inappropriate gestures please? And if a school teacher saw that, he would be mad, say, don't do that brats or you get in detention and kicked out of the dance. What's that? Kids are grinding on the dance floor even though it's a violation of school dance rules? And that's fine, just make sure they aren't saying a conga line or doing the worm. Yeah, I went to a weird high school. But enough of that random and unnecessary tangent, I want to go to another unnecessary tangent. It's different because it relates to the topic of this video. One reason I have heard on why people do not like this movie is them saying it wasn't like the source material, which when I think about more is a really dumb argument. Here's my proposal, ladies and gentlemen. If we judge a movie based on how accurate it was to the source material, whether it was based on a movie, book, TV show, or anything, then literally 75% of all movies would suck. Allow me to further emphasize. I was watching Glass Reflection's video on his thoughts on this film, and one quote that really annoyed me was this.
Like, when I was watching the film, I was face palming every couple of minutes and constantly comparing it to the anime that I know and love. When I was watching the film, I was face palming every couple of minutes and constantly comparing it to the anime. I was face palming every couple of minutes and constantly comparing it to the anime, constantly comparing it to the anime, constantly comparing it, 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 constantly comparing.
First of all, Arkada, if you're watching this video, I really respect you and I think you make great content. Second of all, no hard feelings, man, but what the actual did you have a checklist when watching this movie of scenes in the anime? Not just you, Arkada, but every fan who saw the movie. Did we as anime fans have some kind of contract we signed where it says in the fine print that every movie adaptation based on a thing we like must be compared to the original at all costs? That's freaking dumb! Almost a lot of successful movies, both financially and critically, were based on other forms of media but had several differences to their source material, and some are even regarded as classics. Examples include The Shining, How to Train Your Dragon, A Clockwork Orange, Forrest Gump, Shrek, I Kid You Not, Kingsman: The Secret Service, Jurassic Park, the previously mentioned Starship Troopers, Fight Club, The Godfather, Apocalypse Now, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and A Beautiful Mind, which was based on a real-life person but was really inaccurate to how his schizophrenia was portrayed. But when it comes to anime fans, we just suddenly have this standard where every movie adaptation of an anime must be Citizen Kane or The Resurrection of Jesus Christ? What kind of standards did everyone have for this movie? I wasn't expecting much despite the trailers looking bad, but I came out pleasantly surprised. Is everyone so scarred from Dragon Ball Evolution that they assume all anime adaptations from Hollywood suck because they are adaptations of things we like? It's a cynical view which forces everyone to nitpick every detail in the movie, and not in a humorous way like cinema sins. Why can't this film and Ghost in the Shell just stand on their own merits and just be movies? Is there something wrong with a movie adaptation being its own thing? I'm not saying you're not allowed to dislike this movie. You can dislike this movie all you want. I'm just saying that comparing this to its source material and just calling it a review is just flat out pessimism and just having high standards. Not to mention, almost every negative review, keyword being almost, I have heard said this: I saw the original anime and I hate it because it's not exactly like this. You're saying the same thing over and over. You say Hollywood is unoriginal, but you yourself are not original with your thoughts. But I can say why you hated this and not compare it to the original. Okay, random Death Note fan, tell me why it was a bad movie without comparing it to its source material. Well, you see in the original anime. You just did it! You compared it to the source material, you f***ing hack! I sincerely apologize for that. I almost went full-on Sammy Classic Sonic fan there, and believe me, nobody wants to go full-on Sammy Classic Sonic fan if they meant to be taken seriously. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry. Main point is, let's just move on. Now you could be saying right now, Nick, didn't you just compare this to the original? Aren't you being a hypocrite? Well, let me justify this. I only compared this to the original because there were some things I thought the movie did good and bad, and I wanted to bring up on how the movie is surprisingly a little bit like the anime, not just with the title and character names alone. One thing I'd like to add is that even if I never saw the original source material, I would have thought this movie would be okay at best. But strangely, as someone who saw the original source material, I thought this movie was good as opposed to just okay. You could also be arguing that, Nick, who is this movie for? And if I were to answer it, I'd say that judging from the trailers and posters alone, it looks like it's for people who just like movies. It wasn't trying to be like, hey, we're exactly like this thing you like. It's just like, hey, this is a movie based on a thing, but we're not the same. It wasn't even saying we're better than this thing. They didn't just slap a title we're all familiar with. It just decided to try and stand on its own. It was a different universe, but despite that, they still did their research. It looked like they knew what Death Note was. They knew what made it great, but they couldn't make it like the original because that would require too many movies to make, considering the really complex story and rules of Death Note. If they made everything exactly like the original, not only would it isolate movie fans in general, but it would take so freaking long to tell with multiple movies that they'd have to pray for the first one to do well to finish the story. But could Death Note be a bit longer, like say around 2 hours and 1 minute or an hour and 55 minutes? Yes. The movie did have an ending that I thought was kind of abrupt and a tease for sequels. I thought this was really dumb because I do not like when movies have to act like they are going to be a big franchise. Make one movie first, if it's successful and has potential for a sequel, then make the sequel, rinse and repeat. The director Adam Wingard did admit to saying that he wanted a sequel. While a sequel would be nice to make up for that ending, what else could another hour and 30-minute movie add to the story? I'm not saying this is a perfect movie by any means, I'm just saying that a sequel would really suck. The movie could have just been a bit longer just to tie up some loose ends and maybe just end on one film. Holy crap, this was a long one. I could go on all day till apes retake the earth, but let's conclude this, shall we? Death Note 2017 by Netflix is not a bad movie. It is a good movie. It's not great, it's not perfect, it's not even mediocre nor bad. It's just good, but there could have been room for improvement as well. You'll definitely get some mileage out of it, even if you're not a fan of the show. It's definitely a niche movie when looking at it without comparing it to the source material. Some people may like it, some people may hate it. Does it do the original source material justice? Well, let me sum it up with this edited movie clip.
That'll do, pig. That'll do.
So yeah, I personally enjoyed Death Note 2017. I thought it was a good movie. Now if you excuse me, I must prepare for the hate comment storm that is coming.